Aloha, everyone. On behalf of the state's Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism, welcome and thank you for joining us for this Pathways to Recovery webinar covering tourism updates related to the Maui wildfires, including a cruise update which was requested during the last webinar. The intention of today's webinar is to provide you with up-to-date information from our partners, including the Hawaii Tourism Authority and their cruise consultant, Access Cruise, and to answer as many of your questions as we can. Please note that the information provided may be current as of today, November 2nd, 2023. First, we will go through the questions that have been submitted to us in advance. Due to the volume of questions received, we may run out of time before we've had a chance to address them all during the webinar. We will do our best to get the answers, which will be posted online along with the webinar recording to dbed.hawaii.gov. If you have questions during this webinar, please submit them via the Q&A function within the Zoom platform to ensure that your question is received. And with that, I'd like to introduce our panelists. Joining us today, we have Blaine Miyasato, Board Chair of the Hawaii Tourism Authority, Daniel Nāhoʻopiʻi, Interim President and CEO of the Hawaii Tourism Authority, Shannon McKee, President of Access Cruise, and last but not least, James Kunane Tokioka, Director of the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism. I will now turn it over to Director Tokioka for some opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Lacey. Aloha and good morning to all of you. On behalf of the governor and DBED, I just wanted to continue to have the dialogue. I know when we first started this webinar, it was mainly about the hotels and how we were moving people from their shelters into hotels, and it started that way. But people continually wanted to get information from DBED and our partners, and we felt that the best way to do this is to do it through this webinar and invite people on. And so today, I'm very honored to have our guests who Lacey introduced. The request was made in the last webinar to get somebody here from the cruise industry. And so we have Shannon McKee, who will be updating us on that. And, to everyone who is tuning in, your requests are taken and they're taken very seriously. That's why Shannon is here today. We also have legislators who are online today, and we want to thank them for attending. They want to be connected to what's going on Maui and the recovery efforts, whether it was through economic development or the cleanup. So thank you all for participating. Please know that once again, if you have any questions, put it in the chat and they will be answered, if not today, at a time after the meeting. So aloha, mahalo, and thank you again for attending.
Thank you so much, Director Tokioka. And with that, I'll hand it over to Chair Miyasato for some tourism updates.
Good morning or good afternoon. Aloha, and thank you so much for the opportunity, Director Tokioka and the fellow panelists as well. My update will be very, very quick. Daniel Nāhoʻopiʻi will, as acting CEO, will be giving a more formal presentation, but just wanted to give sort of a quick update in terms of the work that the HTA board is doing. About 6 days after the event on Maui, we were able to request and were granted by Governor Green an tourism emergency declaration that also included
Okay, sorry about that. It looks like we'll need Chair Miyasato to perhaps log up back in. It looks like his screen may have gotten frozen. Perhaps can we move over to Daniel to provide your update, and we'll try to get Chair Miyasato back? Thank you.
Will do. Aloha, aloha mai kako. This is Daniel Nāhoʻopiʻi. As our chair, Blaine Miyasato, mentioned, I am the interim CEO of the Hawaii Tourism Authority. So just as the Hawaii Tourism Authority, we are your government agency responsible for managing tourism in a very holistic manner. Very importantly, we look at balancing community desires, economic goals, and with a base of cultural values, and very importantly, to ameliorate any kind of impacts. So we are very conscious about our natural resources and their uses, as well as supporting our visitor industry partners, such as many that are on the call today. As the chair mentioned, quickly after the devastation, the board worked to determine that there actually is a very immediate need to enact our statute, which allows us to respond to the emergency by allowing us to tap into a fund of $5 million. We had worked with the governor to make that tourism emergency declaration, and I'll show you additional detail in a few seconds that the emergency still exists, and we are working through developing plans, as well as we've already implemented certain marketing and community support actions. So I'll just go over some of the things that we have seen multiple times through these webinars. This is current updated information. As you can see, just based on Maui bookings, air flights to Maui, we are still much lower than we have been over historical 22, and pre-pandemic would be 2019. And this is going forward, and you can still see how bookings to Maui are still less than they were in the previous year. Similarly, hotel reservations continue to be in the negative going forward. There is a little bit of an uptick in October based on there are still some of the relief workers in the rooms, plus we have some increased activity. However, that impact on Maui actually spills over into the overall state. And that's why we're very concerned. As you can see here, through November, through the rest of the year, it's still negative in terms of hotel reservations across the entire state. Because, as you know, Maui plays a large role in terms of the number of visitors that come to visit Maui and other islands, as well as the economic impact and the spending that happens on Maui. The other side of the picture is that because there is limited visitation right now and activity in the visitor industry, there are many who are still unemployed. And you can see the most recent claims show still over 7,000 have filed unemployment claims, and there are many more still part-time jobs that are not available for them. So why are we concerned about that as the visitor industry and as part of what the DBEDT is concerned? Is that, recent study from the Hawaii Housing Study shows that many who are who have lost their main income in the visitor industry, within 6 months or more, they most likely will not be able to maintain their current address. So these are people who may be living outside of the devastation area, but still are not employed because of the work that they're doing in the visitor industry. They can't continue to get a full income. We've also found that the other part of the study found that for those who do not have that income, about 18% would actually move to the continent. Only about 22 are actually able to live with another family or be able to find another place. 18 would rather move to the continent, and that's what we're trying to avoid, both for the fact that we want to ensure that our Maui residents continue to be working and continue to keep our families together, but also the fact as the visitor industry starts to repair itself, there will be a workforce available, as well as the recovery efforts. There needs to be a workforce to help in the recovery efforts as well. So as we mentioned, we are approaching this disaster recovery by ensuring that there's a clear invitation to visitors to come to Maui and the rest of the Hawaiian Islands in a very respectful, compassionate, and responsible means of travel. And I'll show you some examples. One of the first things that we know from research is that even the first sign of any disaster, many are apprehensive of just traveling in general. They may not know the area. They may need to be reassured. And we have sent out messaging and worked in personal communications with many of our industry partners on the continent as well as internationally in order to support them and assure them that the islands are open for business. There are areas that we need to be very careful about, but there are many other opportunities to explore and to be a part of the visitor industry. Some of our responses that we've been doing in messaging, we started from August, as you know, working and integrating ourselves into the recovery efforts. And these all be on the PowerPoint that you'll see. And right now we are working more towards large marketing programs, as well as developing a disaster recovery plan that will then be fed into the overall economic recovery plan. Some of the materials that we presented, as I mentioned, many visitors, get confused about that Maui is an island out of the whole state. So we immediately created these graphics that we've sent out to all of our partners. It's in our Maui toolkit, and I'll show you the link after this. We've also made it very clear where the areas are. And we have also shown that we push constantly to check with accommodations or businesses to ensure if they are available or open. We know many of the properties that are represented here, they may still not have a fully open or may have limited access, as well as businesses. So we always recommend that they check with where they'll be staying or someplace to go for an activity. The other thing we worked with the governor and the Department of Health is to ensure the respectful travel. We work with these pieces that properties and businesses can use to talk about the impacts of talking to people who have been devastated by the fire, so that we ensure that their own health and safety is supported by visitors. So as you can see, we talk about do not bring up the conversation because of the trauma of the devastation, also to support local businesses, and do not ask about residents' personal experiences with the disaster. So going into more of the details, what are we going to be doing in the marketing side? over the next few months. As you can see from this picture, the US makes up the bulk of the traditional visitors or historical visitors to Hawaii. Another large chunk is Canada. And we've also had parts of Asia and Oceania. But you see the bulk is in the US, so we focus first on a US marketing recovery plan. And what we wanted, as I mentioned, the travel demand for Maui, right, is experiencing a tremendous downward trajectory. And you can see it goes into 2024. So our marketing recovery plan moves all the way through that process. We made sure to recreate demand for Maui by adding dimensions to the existing brand. We will be sharing the unique and attractive visitor activities across the island, and they have the potential for repeat visitors to realize that there's so much more to do on Maui than they had done in the past. So we are highlighting all the other activities and attractions, as well as accommodations that are there now, and they can discover that they didn't have a chance to do before. We're also creating new opportunities for Maui-based businesses, and we'll create a desire for visitors to support local. And I'll show you some examples. And this is the target audience, the mindful travelers we talked about on the consumer side. We're also working detailed with travel trade, meaning we're working with personal contacts with the airlines, with our wholesalers and travel advisors. And we're also working on the meeting section about helping them to rebook meetings that may have been scheduled in properties that have limited service, and working with both the planners as well as some of the third-party planners, and then developing new programs for them and showing them what's available. So this is the timeline. You'll see this in the PowerPoint when you download it. But we're working through November. We're actually going into market when you see blitzes here. Our primary markets were Southern California, and then working with the media in New York, because that covers actually the entire US category. And here's some of the messaging. As I mentioned, part of it is the responsible and supporting the community through Malama Maui, showing that there's a lot more to see and do that maybe you didn't look at before. Volunteerism and volunteering opportunities in our Malama Maui. If you go to our website, you'll see many more opportunities, and we are continuing to vet and reach out to organizations that are providing volunteer opportunities. And I think Shannon will be talking a little bit about what the cruise industry is doing on that. And as I mentioned, it's very important that we encourage buying local and putting money back into our economy. So we are promoting many of the local eateries, shops, crafts, and trying to help them to find venues as well. And of course, supporting our Maui communities through donations if they're not able to travel at this time. So Malama Maui, as I mentioned, is our campaign, and you can go to our website at the tourismauthority.org, Maui Recovery, to see specific information and toolkits, pieces of information you can use with your in your own properties or communities, to share out what can be done, where visitors can do, as well as supportive information, like I mentioned, from the governor. Mahalo for this time, and I'll turn it back over.
Thank you so much, Daniel. And next we'll go over to Shannon to provide some cruise updates.
Let's get started. Aloha, everyone, and thank you for having me today. I'm super excited to be here, and I was very excited when Lacey reached out and asked me if I would participate in this session. Anytime I have a chance to talk about cruise, I am happy to share all about the cruise industry. So thank you, mahalo, for having me today. And I will just go through a little bit about what's happening in the cruise industry, as well as more specifically diving into Maui. I did not cover all the islands. It was really Maui centric, but I'll give you an overview of what the industry as a whole is looking like today and how the cruise lines are engaging with Maui. So I guess I should also introduce myself in the fact that I am the Hawaii contractor cruise contractor with the Hawaii Tourism Authority. So every presentation, this is my opportunity to share with everyone the benefits of cruise in Hawaii. Cruise is a very small piece of the visitor arrivals in Hawaii, so many people are not as familiar with the benefits of what cruise lines do bring to destinations around the world. But I think, first of all, what we see with the cruise lines is that they are booking their itineraries 1 to 3 years in advance. And so the cruise lines have stayed committed to Hawaii. The same thing happened when we had Kilauea with Maui. They are staying with the Hawaiian Islands, and Maui is highly desirable in a part of their itinerary and their planning. So some of the benefits include the sampling and the fact that the cruise lines bring the guests to all of the different islands. So it gives them a chance to sample for any first-time cruisers. There's a natural sustainability to cruise based on the size of the ports and the infrastructure. Also, just allowing, other than in Honolulu, there's only traditionally one ship in port at a time. They're great promoters and ambassadors of Hawaii, so they're sharing our message, which is wonderful. Also, they have a small footprint when they come in. They're in a port for a limited time. They're traditionally on an organized excursion, which 30 to 50, 80% of the people are on an organized excursion. And because of that, they leave a smaller footprint. They're also, most of the cruise lines, when they come in, we have a season. In fact, it just ended. Our cruise season is in October and in April, which is traditionally a shoulder season for high tourism in Hawaii. So there's a benefit to that. They are excellent educators. In fact, we share all of our Malama programs, any of our videos that we put out on YouTube. The cruise lines are sharing those on board their vessels when they're coming into Hawaii. So they are also promoting the education that we're giving to their guests before they come in. It's supporting the local community. We do encourage them to buy local, as well as when they come into port, they're using local operators and they are working with the entrepreneurs. They're working with the big companies such as Roberts and Polyad, but they're also working with all the little companies out there and bringing their guests. And again, it goes back to the distribution. They're distributing guests among the major Hawaiian islands. So what is the state of the cruise industry? It was a joke for many years that the cruise industry was recession proof. And then that was proven wrong with the pandemic because the cruise industry took a hit, and they took a harder hit than most in the fact that the cruise industry was 100% shut down during the pandemic, and they remained that way for quite some time. It took them a very long time to build up again. But in 2023, we are happy to say that finally the cruise lines and their ships are all back at sea. So we have a full deployment of the cruise ships. They are sailing on the high seas again. And that the cruise companies, there's been earnings calls, and they are doing exceptionally well. All the big major cruise lines, including Norwegian Cruise Line, Carnival Corporation, as well as Royal Caribbean Group, are reporting record bookings, and their revenues, they're beating their forecasts. So that is encouraging because they racked up an incredible amount of debt during the shutdown. Now, as of September of 2023, we have 90 plus brands and 447 ships sailing the high seas. And the largest source market is the Caribbean at about 38%, which is followed by the Mediterranean with about 17.5%. Hawaii traditionally has run about 1% of the itineraries are coming into the state of Hawaii. There are 19 new cruise vessels the cruise lines have not stopped building, and 68 new cruise vessels that will be coming out through 2028. Cruise fleets are newer, and they feature more excitement and different features on board. And, it's really continued to evolve. Cruise lines today are not what they were. There seems to be a cruise for every demographic out there, and preference and interest. So they really are continuing to evolve. They're working diligently, as I said, to pay down their debt. And operators are more focused on cost reductions, including itinerary adjustments to minimize fuel consumption. Onboard technology has really become an important piece of what they deliver. And what was really exciting was this year, for the first time, MSC Cruises conducted their first net zero emissions cruise in Europe, which is a very big initiative when it comes to sustainability, when it comes to the environment. This is a big topic that the cruise industry has taken on. And a strong market demand combined with product evolution, it looks like the cruise industry is going to make a wonderful recovery. We just went through some of these numbers. About 31 million passengers are expected to cruise this year in 2023. And here's a quick look at what the sailing regions look like. As I said, 38% in the Caribbean, followed by the Mediterranean and Northern Europe. And Hawaii usually falls in that 1% range. So let's look at Hawaii now a little more in depth. 94% of the cruise ships that come are coming from North America, the big brands. And as I said, the big brands, about 85% of all the cruise capacity on the high seas come from 4 major cruise conglomerates, which include your Royal Caribbean Group, your Carnival Corporation, your Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings, as well as a company called MSC. MSC is a part of a bigger organization, which is MSC Shipping, but they also have a cruise line, which has come to Hawaii once before, and they'll be coming back. So the U.S. capacity here, the vessels, about 58% of the vessels are international vessels and 36% are U.S. flagged. With what's happening in Hawaii, we have about 50% of contemporary brands, which is your Royal Caribbean, Norwegian Cruise Line, and then 45% of them are premium brands. The premium brands include your Princess Cruises, as well as your Holland America, your Disney Cruise Line, and then we have our small luxury niche brands, which may include Seabourn Cruises, Silver Sea Cruises. Those ships are traditionally much smaller than their contemporary sisters. What we see, though, is in 2023, we had 16 cruise brands coming into Hawaii. Those were primarily our normal U.S. cruise brands, but next year we're going to see more of our international fleets returning from Europe. So we're going to see Cunard returning, we're going to see Ponant returning. So we're starting to see the international cruise brands and international languages returning to Hawaii too. And here's just a snapshot of what's going to be coming to Maui over the next year, 2023 versus 2024. And I will give you, there's some missing brands here, which I believe that you're going to notice pretty right off if you're working with the cruise industry, in the fact that Royal Caribbean will not be coming to Maui in 2024. We also don't have Celebrity coming in 2024, which is a loss, but it's not because they don't want to be there. And I will explain to you why they are going to be missing. Here is a general snapshot of what the cruise industry has looked like over the last few years for each port. I do look at it by port. And I'm going to point something out to you here on this slide in particular, because when you look at this slide in Maui, we are going to see a dip in Maui. From 247, that number was actually much higher. About 347,000 passengers were anticipated to come to Maui in 2023 by cruise. Unfortunately, with the tragedy in Lahaina, we lost a lot of those cruise calls and they had to go elsewhere. The same for 2024, we see those numbers coming down. Lahaina was a big cruise ship space for the international brands, and I'll explain to you what's happening there. But we are not losing them from the Hawaiian Islands. The cruise ships remain true to the Hawaiian Islands, and what they have had to do is they've had to readjust their itineraries. And in many cases, what they have done is Princess Cruises in particular has repositioned those ships from Lahaina over to Kailua Kona. So Kona is seeing a lift in their cruise numbers in 2024. So here's what our Kahului passengers numbers look like and port call numbers look like for 2024. We do have 101 cruise calls coming in 2024. In 2023, there were 76. So they have absorbed some of the cruise calls coming in from Lahaina. Maui cruise passengers for the port calls in currently for the port calls is 108 cruise calls, 249,000 passengers anticipated. Actually, I'm going to make a correction on this slide before you distribute this, Lacey. I just realized that should say 233,000 passengers. So what's happened exactly when it comes to the Maui cruise calls and the cancellations with Lahaina? So Lahaina was able, she was one of the few ports that was able to take care of the extremely large vessels that were coming in. The vessels, some of the Princess vessels, as well as some of the Royal Caribbean vessels, the Celebrity vessels. Those vessels are actually too large for Kahului to handle. So we've had multiple challenges with the international vessels. Number one, they have not been able to get into Kahului because they're just too large. One of the challenges is their turning basin. Another challenge is the winds at Kahului. Some of the very large ships are challenged, and they're afraid of those winds picking up in the afternoon, broadsiding the ship. So sometimes the maritime teams will say, no, they're not comfortable bringing a ship that large into Kahului. So that's one challenge. The other challenge is it's a positive place to be, is that Norwegian has brought more capacity into Hawaii. So Norwegian has brought the Norwegian Spirit in along with the Pride of America. So the Norwegian Spirit is making many more calls into Hawaii. And when Norwegian comes into Maui, she spends 2 days at a time. So when she's coming in for 2 days at a time, there is less availability in Maui, in Kahului, to absorb those other vessels who can also get into Kahului. So in the short term for October, the ships were not able to make the itinerary changes necessarily to get into Kahului. What I'm seeing for April and for October of next year, they are moving their itineraries wherever they can, if they can fit, so that they can make their itineraries fit into Maui. It's very important to them. So that is the challenge. So the larger ships, they are going to Kona instead of Maui if they can't get in. And then it's been brought up to us, the cruise lines have called, as I said, Maui's very important to them. So they've called me and said, what are the alternatives? Is there somewhere else that we can go on Maui? Because we still want to come to Maui. Someone brought up the topic of Malalaya Harbor. I do not know if this is a viable option or not a viable option or not. I know that the ferries are leaving out of there. It was a question that was asked, and we are evaluating if the weather conditions would allow for the cruise lines even to operate out of there. Obviously, they have to tender their guests in, and with the winds and the seas and the swells, I'm not sure that they could operate safely from Malalaya. And then on top of that, there's a whole process, because Malalaya has never been a cruise ship port. So there's a process that would have to go through in working with the DLNR. We would have to work with Coast Guard. We would have to work with community leaders to ensure that the ships would be welcome there. So there's a long process that would go along, but it is something that has been brought up and we are looking at as an alternative when it comes to Maui. So Malama Hawaii programs, we've been talking about this for some time, that when I look at the cruise lines, there's different ways to look at the cruise lines, because we can look at them from a corporate side. Then we can work with Malama when it comes to the tour operators and packages that we can put together with the tour operators. We have the passengers on board, but we also have the crew on board, which is interesting because the cruise ships are floating cities. And so because they're floating cities, they really have a unique skill set that may not be available otherwise. So what have we done, and what are the cruise ships doing in Maui at the moment? Well, many of them immediately made donations. I know Norwegian made a large donation to Maui United Way right off the bat. They came back to Maui as soon as they possibly could, as soon as it was acceptable to bring guests back. The cruise ships returned. Community programs is where we're at right now and developing. And I think that this has happened is that the cruise lines work so far in advance. They're looking for something that they know will be there, that they can continue to give back, and that will support the community. So it's not something that I can call today and for tomorrow. We need a little more planning. So we've started planning on different levels to give back. We have had conversations with the Maui United Way. We are having conversations with the Red Cross. I had a wonderful conversation with the Department of Education and having the cruise lines actually sponsor possibly some of the classrooms and schools and HEPA filters. These are all pieces that speak to them closely. We've gone through the whole HEPA filter situation on board with the COVID situation. So it's something that they're really in tune with. And then understanding what some of those asks may be and how we can get them involved from a corporate level, from a guest level, from a crew level. And that's where we stand today. And I'm always looking for ideas, because what I can tell you right now is that on a weekly basis, I have multiple cruise lines coming to me saying, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? So I've been working, trying to find with the local community leaders and putting proposals through to the cruise lines on what they can do and what they can sponsor. So that's where we stand today on the cruise industry. And I'm happy to obviously answer any questions that anybody may have, but thank you again for having me, and I will turn things back over to Lacey.
Thank you so much, Shannon. So we'll go into the questions. We've received a number of them already. So the first question states, with businesses being the lifeblood of every community, what is planned to help the businesses that have been affected on this island, and not just in Lahaina, as they will have insurance and FEMA? I'm referring to other businesses whose numbers may be down and may not survive. SBA and other programs out there may not be able to help and require things people cannot qualify for. What is the state going to do to help get these businesses going and able to employ Maui again?
Okay, thank you, Lacey. I'll take this question. I think we talked about it in the last webinar. So the state sent over $12.5 million to Maui County on September 8th. That money was turned over to the county council for approvals. The county council approved it on October 20th. The money was going to go to MEO to distribute loans. And when you add up all the different businesses on Maui, and you talk about 12.5 million, that was the first round of support. It's not a lot of money, but what happened was, when the county council was reviewing the application, they made some provisions or some amendments, and that created another process that had to go back to the finance department on Maui for correction. So I've been talking, as I've said in the last two meetings, Debbie Kabibi at Maui MEO, and she has already developed the applications. We're just, as many people are, wanting to get it out as quick as possible. So you may want to talk to your county council members. It's my understanding that it was approved this week again. And, the money is going to be distributed through 3 agencies. It is Maui Community Federal Credit Union. For the smaller businesses, for the mid-sized businesses, it's going to be Maui Economic Development Board. And for the larger businesses, it's going to be MEO. So that's what the state is doing right now. There's also a program called TANF funds, and these are not for businesses, but these are for local people. And the people on Maui can qualify for this, and some of the people that have businesses will be able to qualify. But this TANF fund is over $100 million, and that is going over to Maui as soon as we can get it out there too. So we're hoping that whatever the logjam was is fixed with the business loans. And I explained before, the loan is going to be a forgivable loan unless you move from the state of Hawaii. If you move from Maui because there's no business there for you, and you go to any of the outer islands, it's forgivable. But if you move to the mainland, it's not. So that's the answer to that question. Thank you, Lacey.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is also for you, Director Tokioka. On the last webinar, you mentioned that there was a handful of smaller hotels that wanted to be a part of the Red Cross room block. Have we made any progress to uncover how many additional rooms have been made available by these hotels? And if so, what are the next steps?
Okay, so every week we're meeting with condo owners, condo associations, hotels, managers, to get a pulse of how much longer hotels are going to be able to house shelter survivors. Our whole goal was to get people into accommodations that had refrigerators and a parking space, places that they could walk their dog, and that's still the goal. We've been very fortunate to work with people like Jeff Wagner from Outrigger, who is putting a lot of the Outrigger inventory into in the blocks. Sneh Patel and his team at Maui Vacation Rentals is another organization that has vacation rentals, and they're the rates that were being charged to properties before was a daily rate at a hotel room. FEMA does not rent vacation rentals like they do hotels. So we need to sit down with Bob Fenton and FEMA, and those meetings are being coordinated. And we need to sit down with some, there's a group of 5 operations or management companies that have a large inventory of these vacation rentals. And we're gonna sit down and decide, figure out the rate. What's taking so long is, as you can imagine, what happened in West Maui hasn't happened anywhere else in this country. When you're looking at fires in Paradise or Katrina in Louisiana, those areas do not have the housing, the units of it, or they have more units available than we have here in Hawaii. In West Maui, it is very, very expensive. We wanted to keep the people, and when I say we, I mean FEMA, Red Cross, and the state of Hawaii, wanted to keep people as close to where they live as possible. Where was that going to be? Where were those accommodations going to be? They were going to be in the hotels. So you're talking about hotel rates that are double and sometimes even triple the amount that they pay in Louisiana. In Louisiana, you're talking about $100-something a night for a room. Here, it was way more than that. So I'll give you an example. For one room, in the FEMA rate for a room night is $10,600 a night per month for one room. Multiply that by 2,500 rooms, which is a little lower than the number we need. That's $26.5 million for 1 month for 2,500 rooms. That's not a sustainable program that the state, FEMA, or the Red Cross can pay for. So all of the different programs that the mayor is putting up, that the state is putting up, we're trying to get people out of hotels and into other types of accommodations as quickly as possible. And not for the fact that the hotels are trying to open up occupancy for tourists that are coming in, because as we said before, we track visitors who canceled reservations. The hotels are tracking visitors, and they're asking them, you know, if you canceled, are you going to return to Maui? They said they're going to return, and many of them said that they're going to wait till another year. So there have been reports on the news that hotels are kicking people out because guests are coming in. All the information that we get, that is not the case. There are a couple of properties that have not been as good stewards as some of the other properties, but I can tell you, and I've said it before, like Royal Hawaiian, the Outrigger, the Westin, the Hyatt. A lot of these properties, and I'm sorry I don't have the entire list in front of me, have been excellent stewards, but some of them, you know, think that they'll be better off not housing people, which, you know, we're not sure that the visitors are coming back into Lahaina. That's going to make a big impact to the rooms inventory that they have. So we're still working with that. We're coordinating a meeting with a lot of the vacation rental owners next week, Friday, to come up with what that rate's going to be so that it's fair for the owners of these vacation rentals and it's fair for FEMA. Because at the end of the day, the bill is going to be foot by FEMA. And, you know, what Bob Fenton has told me, he said, Jimmy, when they go to approve monies that are spent in Hawaii, it's going to go in front of Congress. And Congress is going to ask, why are we paying so much for hotel accommodations on West Maui? Because it's expensive on West Maui, and everybody realizes that now. The rent is expensive. You know, the governor can't just go in and say, well, you can't charge money for rooms. We need to keep it low. We've said, the governor has put out a proclamation. The Attorney General is sticking to that proclamation, which is you cannot increase the rent that you were charging before. And we know that from Lahaina, 80% of the people that were living in Lahaina were renters. So these are people who've lost everything, and now they can't afford to pay rent when when homeowners are charging, you know, astronomical amounts for rent. So that is, you know, top of mind for all of us. It's top of mind to keep people in Hawaii, to keep people on Maui, especially. So we are addressing all of those things every single day. Maui County is going to be taking more of the lead on this. And so the mayor has put together a team. Samalu, Wendy, and Josiah are tasked by the mayor to take this over. So we're working with them every day to transition what we were doing into Maui County. But you know, DBED will be there with them every step of the way. So that's the status of what's happening with the vacation rental rooms. Lacey, thank you for the question.
Thank you, Director Tokioka. So I think the next question may be for Daniel, and it states, I read it will take 4 years for our economy from tourism to come back to the level before the devastating fires. Is this what the projection is for the island of Maui or only Lahaina? What parts of the island will tourism be focused on?
So as DBED had determined earlier, it will take time to overall develop the impact on Maui. Now, it's, as mentioned before, the area of historical Lahaina accounts for 15, and plus parts of West Maui itself, account for 15% of the overall statewide tourism economy. So because there are the experiences and restaurants and activities that were in the historical district are not there, we have to start to develop plans to supplant and encourage other activities and community groups and tours to build up in order to supplant what it will be missing in that area. So it will continue. The 4 years is accurate for overall and not just Lahaina itself. And what parts of the island will tourism be focused on? So as I mentioned, we are currently promoting those businesses that are open or activities that maybe had a smaller exposure, but are very high quality. And we're continuing to push that out to our travel agents and on our website. Travel partners also, and maybe the county may want to discuss some of the building new experiences on the west side, including giving opportunities for local businesses to have venues to promote their goods, to sell their goods. Maybe I'll kick it back to Jimmy. Maybe he wants to talk a little bit more about the building experiences on the west side that he's been involved in.
Yes, thank you, Daniel. The governor tasked DBED and myself to put together an economic recovery commission. And so we've been working with Luana Mahi, who is the Director of Economic Development on Maui. In fact, she was just here yesterday. And so we're putting this commission together, and we're going to be working on frameworks on how best for economic development to proceed. And when we talk about economic development, we're not talking about the rebuild of Lahaina. That's strictly a county function, a county planning function. But we're talking about the types of businesses that would be conducive to the new Maui, but all the new Lahaina. But all of this will be decided by the community. And a lot of the commission's focus is to give businesses from Lahaina hope that we're developing a plan, that there is a path forward, and to make sure that as much as possible we can keep local businesses home. And I know some of you who are businesses there might be watching this and thinking, how is that going to happen? Because visitors are not coming. We have to be prepared for that. So that's part of what this commission is going to be doing. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about working with Luana Mahe. She's developed a plan to have some pop-ups in the West Maui area. It's a great idea. Food trucks, retail shops where people can sell their artwork. They can sell, the things that they were selling along Front Street, but in a pop-up area. The site is to be determined. We had a site earlier, or she had a site earlier that didn't work out, but we're working with other agencies or other landowners to put these businesses in one area so that people can continue to sell their wares during this really, really hard time for a lot of the businesses in West Maui.
Thank you. There was a question that was asking about selling handmade goods after losing their Lahaina location. So thank you for that as well, Director Tokioka. The next question is for Shannon. It says, thank you for your presentation. Can Ma'alaya potential mooring evaluation be accomplished and expedited under the governor's emergency proclamation?
That is something I do not know. That as far as the governor's proclamation, maybe Daniel or Jimmy might have more direction on what would be included in that.
I don't have more information, but I don't think that when I think the question was Ma'alaya, was that the question? Okay,
Yes.
so last night there was a meeting that Chair Chang of DLNR attended, and there was a lot of discussion about commercial activity in Ma'alaya, and there are a lot of local fishermen and boat operators that don't want commercial activity in Ma'alaya. So the recommendation of Chair Chang at the time was to put together a group and come up with recommendations, but the governor is not going to put any proclamation regarding commercial operations at Ma'alaya, as far as I know. If that's something different, when we talk with Chair Chang, we will put it up on the website. But as far as I know, there's nothing that's addressing commercializing Ma'alaya.
As a follow-up question, for the cruise ships that did cancel calls to Lahaina that are too large for Kahului, could tendering be an option?
In Kahului, we have not explored that option. I am not certain at this time, but I can certainly look into it. I'm not sure what an anchorage point would be and how that would work. It goes again back to probably some of the weather conditions also. It's extremely windy there, especially in the afternoons, that would have to be evaluated by the marine teams that with each of the cruise lines. But that isn't an option that we've looked at up to date. But I will ask the questions.
Thank you, Shannon. The next question says hotels and resort condos cannot host displaced residents for much longer, and those individuals are likely 18 to 24 months away from even the possibility of returning to their own home. What happens when they are turned out from these short-term housing, and how, I guess, yeah, what are the next steps for that?
Yes, so sorry about that. I don't want to speak for FEMA, but I do know that everywhere around the country, FEMA does not put up housing for more than 2 years in non-congregate shelters. They also don't do it longer for the direct lease program. So when the disaster happens, they're going to be, helping as much as they can, but there's a point where that ends. And as I mentioned before, when you talk about, 2,500 rooms for 1 month costing $26.5 million. When in the meetings that I've had with Bob Fenton, his focus would be to, put in shelters or accommodations that at the end of the disaster, the county or the state could use those opportunities for housing projects throughout the state, not just put it into a vacation rental or a hotel and not get anything back for that. But there's a balance. Did we want to not house people now? No, absolutely not. So we have to figure that balance out, and we have to figure out the most cost-effective way to house shelter survivors. And I can assure everyone on this call that between FEMA and the state, there's not a day that goes by that's not on the top of everyone's mind. Thank you for that question, Lucy.
Thank you, Director. We received a couple of follow-up questions, I think going back to the unforgivable loans. Do we know what revenue amount is considered for small, medium, and large-sized businesses?
I know that in the beginning they had a scale, but I don't want to comment to that now, because I think they were making changes. So I don't want to give anybody any false information or not incorrect information. So they may want to call the credit Maui Community Credit Union, MEDB, and MEO, because they will know.
Okay, thank you. I think a request also came in asking if DBED can provide attendees with more detailed information on how to apply. And I would say yes, we will definitely send out more information once all of those details come out. Another question for Shannon: if there are activity partners or other businesses that are interested in working with the cruise industry, how can you recommend that they get started?
What you can do is you can contact me. I'm happy to help you and point you in the right direction on whatever kind of business that you might have, and help educate you on the best way to work with the cruise industry. So I can type my email information into the chat there, and just reach out to me, and let's set up a time that we can talk, and I can help guide you through the process.
Thank you so much. We also received a couple of other questions that may be for other organizations that aren't on the webinar today. We do have the questions recorded, and we'll do our best to get all of the answers after the webinar. Before we close out, wanted to give an opportunity to our panelists to see if they wanted to provide any closing remarks.
Just to reiterate, so please go to hawaiitourismauthority.org to see our Maui toolkit, And also, as I mentioned, we have specific information, and we do duplicate the sources that DBEDT are putting out now for both visitor-facing, small businesses, as well as community organizations. And our toolkit has a lot of information and also videos that you can use to post on your website, as well as the placards and the other information that can be put in your business locations. Mahalo.
For me, I'd just like to say thank you. Thank you for having me and letting me talk about the cruise industry. And I'm excited that there are those out there that would like to work with the cruise industry. And, you know, let us know how we can help and how we can support. As I said, they've all reached out asking what else they can do when they're coming into ports. What other activities can they offer to give back to those that are in need in Maui? So I'm looking forward to working with everybody. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Shannon. And before I hand it back to Director Tokioka for some closing remarks, just wanted to remind everyone that in case you weren't able to get to your question, we do have them all captured and we'll do our best to have the answers compiled and posted to dbed.hawaii.gov, along with the webinar recording and the presentations that were shared today, as well as any of the links mentioned and Shannon's contact information as well. Please let us know if you have any suggestions for future webinar topics, or if there are any organizations or individuals in particular that you would like to hear from. And then I'll pass it back to Director Tokioka. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lacey, Daniel, and Shannon. And unfortunately, Blaine got cut off. And just so everyone knows, Blaine is on a trip, work trip to Japan. And so that may have been one of the reasons why the connection was not good. But once again, thank you everyone for your questions, for your comments, for attending, for giving us guidance as far as what's important to you, because that's what these webinars are all about, is what is important to you. I just wanted to add a couple of things. As Daniel did his presentation, I think it's important for everyone to know that HDA has created a lot of great content with videos on what Malama Hawaii means to the local people of Maui. And the videos are very, very well done. They're just asking visitors to be very respectful and cognizant of what front desk clerks or anyone in the industry has to deal with when questions are asked about, you know, their home. And you know, it's really, really well done. So please do take a look at that, because it is for your island. It is for Maui. The question regarding information about applications for the loan forgiveness program, we will send out that information, but you probably would be better off checking the websites of those three organizations that I mentioned, which is Maui Community Federal Credit Union, MEDB, Maui Economic Development Board, and MEO, Maui Economic Opportunity. So once again, thank you all. For the team from Becker, Lacey, Don, and Margaret, thank you so much for coordinating this every other week, and we look forward to the next one. Aloha.